everybody, welcome to my channel.
Olivia de Havilland, July 1, 1916 to July 26, 2020, was a legendary actress of Hollywood's golden age, known for her elegance, intelligence, and quiet strength both on and off the screen. Born in Tokyo to British parents and raised in California, she rose to fame in the 1930s with her role as Maid Marian opposite Errol Flynn in The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938. Their on-screen partnership, featured in 8 films, became one of the most iconic in cinema history. De Havilland is perhaps best remembered for her role as Melanie Hamilton in Gone with the Wind, 1939, a performance that earned her an Academy Award nomination and cemented her place in film history. But she was far more than a soft-spoken supporting player. Olivia de Havilland was a fierce advocate for artists' rights in Hollywood. In 1943, she took Warner Brothers to court over contract restrictions that kept actors bound to studios beyond their agreed terms. Her legal victory, known as the De Havilland Decision, was a landmark case that changed the power dynamic in favor of performers and is still celebrated today. She won 2 Academy Awards for Best Actress for To Each His Own, 1946, and The Heiress, 1949, showcasing her range and depth as an actress. De Havilland's career spanned over 50 films, from light-hearted romantic adventures to intense dramas. And she worked with some of the greatest directors and actors of her time. In later years, she moved to Paris, where she lived a quiet life away from Hollywood, making occasional appearances and receiving honors, including the National Medal of Arts and appointment as a Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire in 2017. Olivia de Havilland passed away at the age of 104, leaving behind a legacy of grace, strength, and artistic integrity. She remains one of the last surviving links to the classical era of American cinema, a woman whose life was as remarkable as the characters she portrayed. Early life and entry into film. Olivia Mary de Havilland was born in Tokyo, Japan, to British parents. Her father was a patent attorney, and her mother a former stage actress. After her parents divorced, Olivia and her younger sister, Joan Fontaine, moved with their mother to California. Both sisters would go on to become acclaimed actresses, though their relationship was famously strained. De Havilland's film career began almost by accident. After appearing in a local production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, she was discovered and signed to a Warner Brothers contract in 1935. That same year, she reprised her role as Hermia in the film adaptation of the play, marking her official Hollywood debut. Partnership with Errol Flynn. From 1935 to 1941, Olivia de Havilland starred in a string of swashbuckling adventure films opposite Errol Flynn. Their chemistry was electric, especially in Captain Blood, 1935, and The Adventures of Robin Hood, 1938, and audiences adored the romantic tension between her refined characters and Flynn's roguish charm. Despite rumors, the two never had a romantic relationship off-screen, though de Havilland later admitted to having deep feelings for Flynn that were never acted upon. The Warner Brothers struggle. In the de Havilland Decision. By the early 1940s, de Havilland was frustrated with the shallow roles Warner Brothers offered her. She wanted to pursue deeper, more meaningful parts, but was often cast in what she called decorative roles. When her 7-year contract ended, the studio tried to add time for her suspensions, standard practice at the time. She sued the studio in 1943. With support from the Screen Actors Guild, she won the case. The court ruled that studios could not indefinitely extend contracts, a decision that fundamentally shifted power in Hollywood away from the studios and toward performers. This case, known as the de Havilland Decision, is considered one of the most important legal victories in entertainment law. A career of depth and subtlety freed from her Warner Brothers contract. De Havilland sought out more challenging roles. She won her first Academy Award for Best Actress for To Each His Own, 1946, playing an unwed mother who sacrifices everything for her child. Her second Oscar came with The Heiress, 1949, a haunting performance as a timid woman transformed by betrayal into steely resolve. Other notable films include Hold Back the Dawn, 1941, The Snake Pit, 1948, a groundbreaking portrayal of mental illness. Hush, Hush. Sweet Charlotte, 1964, opposite Bette Davis in a Southern Gothic thriller feud with Joan Fontaine, one of Hollywood's most famous sibling rivalries. De Havilland's relationship with her sister Joan Fontaine was filled with competition and estrangement. Both sisters were nominated for Best Actress in 1942, Fontaine won. And de Havilland was gracious, though reportedly hurt. Their relationship deteriorated over the years, culminating in a permanent estrangement that lasted until Fontaine's death in 2013. Later life and honors. After moving to Paris in 1956, de Havilland largely stepped away from the film industry, though she occasionally appeared in television and made-for-TV films. She remained active in the arts and in public life, attending festivals and receiving honors late into her 90s. Notable recognitions include National Medal of Arts, 2008, Chevalier of the Légion d'Honneur, France, Dame Commander of the British Empire, 2017. Awarded by Queen Elizabeth II. Legacy. Olivia de Havilland was the last surviving major star from Gone with the Wind, and her longevity gave her a rare position as both participant in and witness to a transformative era of cinema. Her personal courage, especially in standing up to the studio system, inspired generations of actors who came after her. She wasn't just a glamorous star, she was a force of will, a brilliant interpreter of character, and a symbol of integrity in an industry often dominated by conformity and control. De Havilland died peacefully in Paris on July 26, 2020. At the age of 104, leaving behind a filmography that spans nearly 50 years and a legacy that will last for generations. A quiet revolutionary. Olivia as a symbol of agency. What sets Olivia de Havilland apart from many of her contemporaries is how she combined classic Hollywood poise with real personal courage. Her 1943 legal battle against Warner Brothers didn't just change contracts, it challenged the studio system at its most authoritarian moment. This was when actors were seen as commodities. De Havilland, by contrast, insisted that actors were artists and human beings with rights. This was no mere stunt, she risked being blacklisted or permanently sidelined. Instead, she emerged victorious. Not only in court but in her career. That blend of refinement and fire came to define her. Craft and character. A serious actress in a glamorous age, de Havilland's acting was marked by restraint, emotional clarity, and a deep intelligence. She wasn't showy. She didn't choose scenery. But what she could do with a flick of her eyes or a trembling pause could say more than a monologue. She possessed a classical dignity that gave weight to every role, from demure romantic leads to psychologically complex heroines. Examples of her range. In Gone with the Wind, Melanie could have been a cloying, passive character. Instead, de Havilland gave her an inner strength that quietly anchored the chaos around her. In The Snake Pit, she played a woman suffering from mental illness with raw vulnerability and realism, earning widespread acclaim and helping destigmatize mental health issues in popular culture. In The Heiress, she subtly transformed from a naive, emotionally wounded young woman into someone cold, confident, and unreachable, with no overacting, only precision and presence. She worked with some of the finest directors of her era: William Wyler, Mitchell Lyson, Anatole Litvak, and Robert Siodmak. These collaborations allowed her to dive into complex female roles rarely given center stage in the 1940s. A Star in Exile, Life in Paris in 1955. De Havilland married French journalist Pierre Galanti and moved to Paris, where she lived for the next 6 decades. This physical and psychological distance from Hollywood seemed intentional. She enjoyed a refined, cultured life, fluent in French, attending the opera, and appearing at select diplomatic and artistic events. Her home, near the Bois de Boulogne, became her sanctuary. Even though she stepped away from film, she didn't vanish. She appeared occasionally on television in high-quality projects such as Anastasia, The Mystery of Anna, 1986, for which she earned a Golden Globe. She also wrote and published, including a witty memoir about life in France titled Every Frenchman Has One, 1962, full of dry humor and cultural observations. The public and the private, Olivia's mystery. Though she gave interviews throughout her life, de Havilland maintained a certain mystique. She was polite but never eager to divulge gossip. She disliked being categorized or compared, especially in relation to her sister. As Joan Fontaine herself once put it, "I married first, won the Oscar before Olivia did, and if I die first, she'll undoubtedly be furious because I beat her to it." Indeed, Olivia did outlive her sister, and nearly everyone else from her generation. But she did so with quiet authority. She aged gracefully, rarely courting the spotlight, yet always appearing when it mattered, at retrospectives, awards ceremonies, and tributes to the golden era she helped define. In her own words, some of Olivia de Havilland's most enduring quotes reveal her sharp intellect and quiet humor. Famous people feel that they must perpetually be on the crest of the wave, not realizing that it is on the trough that one rests, surges ahead, and makes the next crest. The one thing that you have that nobody else has is you. Your voice, your mind, your story, your vision. I don't feel the cold. It's my British blood. On being 90 and still walking through Paris winters without complaint. Final years and enduring respect. She lived to be 104. Making her one of the longest-lived major Hollywood stars in history. On her 100th birthday in 2016, she received an outpouring of tributes from fans, actors, and film historians worldwide. She responded graciously, still alert, witty, and dignified. Even in old age, she remained involved in legal matters. In 2017, she sued the makers of the TV series Feud for using her likeness without permission. Though she lost the case, it underscored her lifelong commitment to artistic control and personal rights. Legacy. Olivia de Havilland stands alongside Katharine Hepburn and Bette Davis as one of the great actresses of her time, but she also occupies a unique place as a pioneer of labor rights in the film industry. Her legacy is not just one of artistry, but of justice. She showed that grace is not weakness, that strength can be quiet, and that a woman, on screen or off, could stand her ground without shouting to be heard. Relationships with her contemporaries. Bette Davis. Olivia and Bette Davis had a deep mutual respect and a warm friendship that lasted decades. Both women were contract players at Warner Brothers. Both fought the studio system, Davis famously before de Havilland, though without the same legal success, and both portrayed complicated, ambitious women on screen. De Havilland once said of Davis, "She was the first person to encourage me in my career. She was generous and inspiring." Their most famous collaboration, Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte, 1964, came about when Davis personally invited Olivia to replace Joan Crawford, who had left the production mid-shoot. Despite the gothic nature of the film, de Havilland brought gravitas and subtle malice to her role, a departure from her usual characters and a testament to her range. Errol Flynn, though they never had a confirmed romantic relationship. De Havilland and Flynn's chemistry was unmistakable, and the emotional undercurrent between them was real. In later interviews, Olivia admitted, "He was a charming, magnetic man, and yes, I did fall in love with him. But I knew it could never be." Their last collaboration was They Died with Their Boots On, 1941, and while they never reunited on-screen afterward, Flynn remained one of the defining figures of her early career. Her calm, nuanced performances were the perfect foil to his exuberance. Philosophy and values. Olivia de Havilland was, in many ways, a woman out of step with the expectations of her time, and precisely because of that, she endured. She valued integrity over fame. She turned down lucrative but artistically weak projects. Even in lean years, depth over image, she refused to be typecast, fighting for more psychologically rich roles. Privacy over spectacle. Living in Paris was as much a personal preference as a symbolic act. She stepped outside the Hollywood machine and found peace. She was fiercely private, deeply intelligent, and often described as regal, but that didn't mean she lacked warmth. Those who knew her well often spoke of her wit, her laughter, and her sense of mischief. At the same time, she could be steely, especially when it came to matters of principle, mentorship and influence, though she wasn't known for being a mentor in the traditional sense. De Havilland's example was an education for many actors, especially women. Her battle with Warner Brothers opened doors for future stars to have control over their careers, including Marilyn Monroe, who later fought her own battles with the studio system, Jessica Lange and Meryl Streep, whose careers benefited from the kind of complex female roles de Havilland had fought to make viable, Emma Thompson, who has often cited the importance of actresses in the Golden Age who brought literary sensitivity to film. Her role in the shaping of female archetypes on screen. De Havilland evolved dramatically over the decades in her roles, from the passive ingenue to the stoic survivor to the morally ambiguous woman in A Man's World. Her performances helped shift the Hollywood female archetype in crucial ways, from accessory to subject, from romantic object to moral center, from victim to agent of change. In films like The Heiress, she depicted heartbreak not as a collapse but as a transformation, an arc that felt fresh, honest, and surprisingly modern. Death and enduring memory. When Olivia de Havilland passed away on July 26, 2020, it was a moment that felt like the end of an era. At 104, she was the last major surviving star of Hollywood's golden age. Yet her life was not one that belonged only to the past. It continues to resonate in tributes. Fellow actors, critics, and directors emphasized not just her elegance but her fire. Martin Scorsese once said, "She showed us that women could be powerful and complex, even in a system designed to flatten them." Her legacy is carried forward in every actor who dares to demand better scripts, who chooses artistic integrity over popularity, or who simply believes they deserve to control their own destiny. Final reflection. Olivia de Havilland's story is not just that of a movie star. It is the story of a woman who understood her worth in a world that tried to undervalue her. She did not shout. She did not scandalize. She simply insisted, again and again, that she mattered. And because of that insistence, generations of women in film have had the courage to do the same. Family and early struggles. The roots of resilience. Born to British parents in Tokyo in 1916, Olivia's early life was far from stable. Her mother, Lillian Fontaine, was a trained stage actress who gave up her career for marriage. Her father abandoned the family while Olivia and Joan were still young, and their mother relocated with them to California. Olivia's relationship with her mother was close but demanding. Lillian, ambitious for both daughters, pushed them into acting, but also insisted on discipline and propriety. These early pressures, domestic instability, emotional distance from her father, sibling rivalry, and expectations of perfection, instilled in Olivia both a fierce independence and a guarded emotional core. That tension, between surface decorum and inner rebellion, would later define many of her most haunting performances. The sibling rivalry. More than a tabloid feud, the relationship between Olivia and Joan Fontaine, born Joan de Beauvoir de Havilland, has been oversimplified by decades of headlines about jealousy and bitterness. The truth is more psychologically layered. They competed for their mother's approval. They were constantly compared by the press, Olivia often cast as the serious actress, Joan as the glamorous one. Their rivalry climaxed in 1942 when Joan won the Oscar for Suspicion, beating Olivia's performance in Hold Back the Dawn. Joan later claimed Olivia refused to congratulate her, though Olivia always denied this. Their final break came after their mother's death in 1975, reportedly because Olivia failed to inform Joan in time about her passing. After that, they never spoke again. Yet, this estrangement only added to Olivia's mystique. She rarely spoke ill of Joan, refusing to feed the press's hunger for gossip. Her silence, at times painful, was a form of grace. The de Havilland Decision. A turning point in American labor law. The 1943 lawsuit Olivia de Havilland filed against Warner Brothers wasn't just a Hollywood scandal, it was a revolutionary moment in U.S. labor law. The context: studios had long enforced option contracts, which allowed them to suspend actors, often for refusing roles, then add that time to their 7-year deals. Olivia's contract expired, but Warner Brothers added her suspension time, claiming she still owed them 6 months. What she did, Olivia sued. And she won. The California Court of Appeal ruled in her favor in de Havilland v. Warner Brothers Pictures, Inc., affirming that the Labor Code's 7-year limit meant 7 calendar years, not cumulative active time. The impact: this empowered actors, writers, and directors to negotiate better terms. It was cited in later landmark disputes, including those involving Bette Davis, Marilyn Monroe, and even modern artists in the music industry. For an actress known for refined manners and quiet dignity, her legal fight was remarkably bold. It became a defining chapter of her legacy, one where her personal courage reshaped the entertainment industry. Olivia de Havilland and the cult of longevity. Olivia de Havilland lived so long and with such elegance that she came to seem almost mythic. In the public imagination, she stood as the last living witness to a vanished world. Pre-World War II Hollywood, the glamour of Technicolor adventures, the rise of studio power, the decline of that power, and the slow shift to actor-led filmmaking. At 90, she was still attending red carpets. At 100, she gave thoughtful interviews from her Paris home, recalling Errol Flynn and Bette Davis with clarity. At 103, she was made a Dame of the British Empire, the oldest woman ever to receive the honor. She lived through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the rise and fall of the Hollywood studio system, the digital revolution in film, and still, she remained intellectually curious, eloquent, and gracious. Symbolism and cultural iconography. Over time, Olivia de Havilland took on an almost mythic quality. She symbolized the survival of feminine strength without bitterness, the beauty of restraint in an era of sensationalism, the triumph of individual will in a system built to suppress it. She was the embodiment of the woman who navigates impossible systems with grace, but knows when to rise and resist. Final summary. What Olivia de Havilland represents. To understand Olivia de Havilland is to understand the evolution of women in cinema, from decorative figures to agents of their own destiny. The power of principle over convenience. Her legal battle cost her roles and delayed her career, but won her the future. The majesty of restraint, she was never a scandal figure. Never sold a memoir full of bitterness, never asked for attention she didn't earn. She was, and remains, one of the purest expressions of what classic Hollywood could produce when talent, intelligence, and courage converged in one woman. A Life in Paris. The Hollywood exile who never felt lost after marrying Pierre Galanti in 1955, Olivia de Havilland settled in Paris, where she lived for the rest of her life. This was not a retreat but a conscious act of self-definition. In Hollywood, she would have been typecast as a legend. In Paris, she could be a woman, anonymous when she wanted, celebrated when she chose. Her apartment in the 16th arrondissement was filled with books, art, and the quiet hum of a life well curated. She became fluent in French, hosted dinner parties with writers and diplomats, and remained intellectually curious. In a sense, she embodied the expatriate ideal, cultured, worldly, removed from the noise of celebrity while retaining the magnetism of it. Her Paris years were also the most private. There were no paparazzi photos, no memoir confessions. When she did appear publicly, for a festival, a tribute, a centennial celebration, it was with deliberate elegance, a quiet nod to her roots in Hollywood's golden age. Late career and the reinvention of the older woman on screen, while many actresses of her generation faded into obscurity or were handed minor, mother, roles. Olivia de Havilland carved a rare third act. Notable late career appearances: The Screaming Woman, 1972, a TV thriller where she portrayed a woman dismissed as delusional, a chilling commentary on how society treats aging women. Roots: The Next Generations, 1979, a prestige project that marked her continued relevance to American cultural memory. Anastasia, The Mystery of Anna, 1986, she won a Golden Globe for her performance, playing Empress Maria Feodorovna with regal complexity. These weren't just roles, they were statements. De Havilland aged on-screen with dignity and substance, refusing caricature or self-parody. She helped pave the way for actresses like Judi Dench, Helen Mirren, and Glenn Close to demand serious, complex parts well past middle age. Personal style: The art of timelessness in an age of ever-shifting beauty standards, Olivia de Havilland represented an ideal of timeless refinement. Her style, from her 1930s gowns to her late-life pearls and scarves, never chased trends. She dressed like someone who knew her essence and had no need to prove it. This style wasn't merely aesthetic, it was philosophical. It reflected her values: order, grace, formality, and private joy. In an era when stars were expected to be constantly visible, she chose invisibility as a luxury. She did not age publicly, she evolved privately. Cultural reverence and myth-making as her peers passed away: Crawford, Davis, Hepburn, Fontaine. De Havilland took on an almost ghostly grandeur. By the 2010s, she wasn't just remembered, she was revered. Film retrospectives treated her as royalty. Her birthday became a cultural event for classic film enthusiasts. Film historians, feminists, and legal scholars all claimed her as theirs, a woman who had stood at the intersection of art, gender politics, and justice. Even her death in 2020 was marked not just with obituaries, but with eulogies for an era. One of the last living ties to a world that now exists only in black and white. Her passing was like the final page of an epic. What she stood for, Olivia de Havilland stood for something increasingly rare: integrity without bitterness. Her legacy is shaped by contradictions that reveal her strength. She was demure but defiant. She was refined but rebellious. She was gentle in manner but firm in principle. She played the ingenue but lived like a sovereign. She didn't seek immortality, but through quiet acts of courage, a court case, a performance, a move to Paris, she earned it. Quotable Olivia. Her wisdom in her own words, I would prefer to live forever in perfect health, but if I must at some time leave this life, let me do so with a minimum of fuss. A statement of poise and understatement. How very Olivia. The TV business is soul-crushing. The people do not care about your art. Spoken with clarity by someone who knew what true artistry demanded. We meet a few people in our lives who make a difference, who leave a mark. I've tried to be one. And she was. Legacy in the 21st century. Beyond nostalgia today, Olivia de Havilland is more than a memory of old Hollywood. She's a model for actors. She's a beacon of how to combine success with integrity. For feminists, she's a pioneer who won a landmark legal case. For audiences, she's a reminder that quiet doesn't mean weak and grace doesn't mean submission. She exists now in the realm of legacy, not just for what she did, but for who she chose to be. Philosophy of self-control and restraint. One of the most misunderstood elements of Olivia de Havilland's public image is the perception of her as sweet or prim. In reality, her guiding principle was self-control as power. In her personal life, she believed that dignity required restraint, not repression, but discipline. In one interview, she reflected, "I wasn't interested in being popular. I was interested in being true." This may explain why she was never the center of Hollywood gossip. She valued substance over story. She never posed for pin-ups, never staged romantic scandals, never courted publicity. She simply did her work, better than most, and let history decide her worth. Tornado. The roles she refused. A portrait in Courage. After winning her court case, Warner Brothers essentially blacklisted her. During that time, she received offers from other studios, but she turned down scripts that didn't offer psychological depth. She refused over-sexualized roles. She believed sensuality should emerge from character, not costume. Passive women, she said. If the character cannot act, I am not interested in watching her react. Safe career plays. She turned down roles that would have kept her visible but uninspired. When she finally returned in To Each His Own, 1946, she won her first Academy Award. This act of defiance was revolutionary in a time when actresses were often financially punished for aging, speaking out, or rejecting typecasting. Balance scale. Her legacy in legal history. Still cited today, the de Havilland decision didn't just change Hollywood, it's still a binding legal precedent.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching.